The Alpha King was stepping out of his carriage when something small tapped his gloved hand. Not a weapon, not a petition, a crumpled silver coin. He looked down. A little girl stood before him, hair tangled, shoes worn through, both hands shaking as she held the coin up like it was everything she owned. "Please," she said quietly, "this is all I have." His guards moved instantly. Too close, too fast, but he raised his hand, stopping them. No one paid King Aldrich Ravenshield silver pennies. People paid him in taxes, tributes, fear. He crouched down, eye level with her. "What do you want, child?" She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I want you to help me," she said, "because the city guard won't." That made him pause. She leaned closer, voice trembling. "They said if I told anyone, my mama wouldn't come home." That's when he noticed her knuckles bruised, her sleeve torn, and the way she kept glancing over her shoulder. King Aldrich slowly took the silver penny, not because he needed it, but because whatever she was about to ask was worth far more than money. "Stay with me until the end," because what this little girl asked next shocked even a man who thought he'd seen every kind of evil. King Aldrich Ravenshield had ruled the northern kingdoms for 12 years. He'd built his reputation on two things: keeping his word and making problems disappear. His territory stretched from the Iron Mountains to the Merchant Coast, and everyone knew the rules. You paid your taxes on time, you stayed quiet, and you never brought children into court business. That autumn evening started like any other. Aldrich was leaving the royal treasury after settling accounts with the merchant guilds. Tax collections, trade agreements, the usual business that kept his kingdom running smoothly. His black carriage waited in the courtyard, horses stamping impatiently, while his personal guards Sir Gareth and Commander Thorne flanked the entrance like human shields. The city knew this routine. When the king emerged at dusk, people found somewhere else to be. Merchants closed their stalls. Mothers called their children inside, and the smart ones bowed low before he even noticed them. But this little girl didn't bow. She didn't run. She walked straight toward him with that crumpled coin clutched in her tiny fist. Aldrich had seen desperate people before. Nobles who owed debts they couldn't pay, merchants behind on taxes, criminals who'd gambled their last freedom on the wrong alliance. Desperation had a smell, a look, a way of making people do foolish things. This was different. This child wasn't desperate in the way adults get desperate. She was methodical, determined, like she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in her head. Her clothes were clean but patched. Her cloak had been mended so many times, the original fabric was barely visible. But her eyes held something Aldrich rarely saw anymore. Pure, unwavering hope. "What's your name?" he asked, still crouched at her level. His guards shifted nervously behind him, hands instinctively moving toward their sword hilts. They'd never seen their king take this much time with anyone, let alone a child. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Ashford." "Lily Ashford," Aldrich repeated slowly. "How old are you, Lily?" 7. Her voice got smaller with each answer, but she didn't back away. "Almost 8. Aldrich glanced at Gareth, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug. In their world, children meant complications. Children meant witnesses, questions, attention from the temple that nobody wanted. Smart rulers avoided children entirely. "Where are your parents, Lily?" Aldrich asked gently. That's when the tears started. Not the dramatic sobbing you'd expect from a scared child, but quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks while she fought to keep talking. "My papa died last winter," she said. "Fever took him. And my mama, they took her 3 days ago." Aldrich felt something cold settle in his chest. "Who took her?" Lily looked over her shoulder again, scanning the busy courtyard like she expected someone to jump out of the crowd. "The bad men," she whispered. "They said Mama owed them money. But she doesn't have any money. We don't have any money, except this." She held up the silver penny again, and Aldrich could see it was worn smooth from being held countless times. Probably her food money for the week, maybe longer. "These bad men," Aldrich said carefully. "What did they look like?" Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Big. Scary. One had a scar across his face like this. She drew a line from her eye to her jaw. Another one had rings on all his fingers. They drove a wagon with bars on the windows. Aldrich's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who she was describing. The Thornwood gang had been operating in the lower city for months. running protection rackets, trafficking people, generally making life difficult for everyone. But taking someone's mother was a new violation even for them. "Lily, where's your father?" Aldrich asked, then caught himself. "I'm sorry, you said fever took him." "Last winter," she confirmed. "Mama's been working at the tavern and doing washing to earn coins. It's just been us." She paused. "Was just us." Commander Thorne stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we should return to the palace." "The council meeting." Aldrich silenced him with a look. In 12 years of ruling, settling disputes, and managing a kingdom, he'd developed rules that kept him alive and respected. Rule number 1, never get emotional about politics. Rule number 2, never trust anyone completely. Rule number 3, never, ever get involved with commoners' personal problems. But looking at Lily Ashford clutching her silver penny like it could buy miracles, Aldrich felt something shift inside his chest. Maybe it was remembering his own mother, who'd died when he was young, leaving him to navigate court politics alone. Maybe it was thinking about all the times he'd wished someone would step up when the world felt too big and too cruel. "Lily, what exactly do you want me to do?" he asked. She took a deep breath like she was about to jump off a cliff. "I want you to bring my mama home. I know you're the king. I know people are scared of you, but I also know you help people sometimes." Aldrich raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" "Mistress Hale from the bakery. She said when those other bad men tried to make her pay extra taxes, you made them stop. She said, you protect people in the city." Aldrich almost smiled despite himself. Mistress Hale had been paying fair taxes for years, but apparently she'd put her own spin on his enforcement of law. "Lily, this isn't how these things work. You can't just walk up to a king and ask for help." "But I did," she said simply. "And you're still here talking to me." That stopped him cold. She was right. Any other evening, any other person, Aldrich would have been in his carriage and gone by now. His guards were probably wondering if their king had lost his mind, standing in the courtyard negotiating with a 7-year-old. "The bad men said if I tell the city guard, they'll hurt Mama worse," Lily continued. "They said if I tell anyone, they'll make sure I never see her again. But they didn't say I couldn't hire someone to help." Aldrich stared at this tiny girl who just used the word times higher times like she was conducting official business. "You want to hire me?" "Yes, for 1 silver penny. It's all I have, but I can get more. I can do chores, or sell my cloak, or—" "Lily," Aldrich's voice was gentle but firm. "1 silver penny isn't enough for what you're asking." Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a terrified 7-year-old whose world had been turned upside down. "Please," she whispered. "She's all I have. If something happens to her, I'll be all alone, and I don't know how to be alone." Aldrich looked at that silver penny in his hand, then back at Lily's tear-streaked face. In his position, emotions were weaknesses that got you manipulated or overthrown, but standing there, listening to this child talk about being alone, something inside him cracked. "Tell me exactly what happened 3 nights ago," he said quietly. Lily wiped her eyes and straightened up, trying to be brave. "Mama was making soup. Vegetable soup. She always makes it on Sundays because it's cheap and lasts all week." Aldrich nodded. "Go on." "Someone pounded on our door, really hard, like they were going to break it. Mama looked through the crack and got scared, really scared. She told me to hide under the bed and not come out no matter what I heard." The little girl's voice got smaller as she continued. "But I could hear everything. They said Papa owed them money before he died, 20 gold crowns. They said Mama had to pay it back or they'd take me instead." Aldrich's blood went cold. 20 gold crowns was nothing to him, less than he spent on a single state dinner. But, to a tavern worker earning copper pennies, it might as well have been 20,000. "My mama told them we don't have that kind of money. She showed them our coin purse. 3 copper pennies. That's all we had." Thorne shifted behind Aldrich, checking the position of the sun. They had other business tonight, council meetings, diplomatic visitors. But Aldrich held up his hand again. "What did they say then?" "They laughed, said she could work it off, special work for special clients. And when she said no, they grabbed her. She screamed at me to stay hidden, to be brave, to find someone who could help." Lily's voice cracked on the last word, but she kept going. They put her in the wagon with the bars. One of them said they'd come back in 3 days for my answer. That was 3 days ago. Tonight, Aldrich felt his jaw clench. The Thornwood gang wasn't just running protection rackets. They were trafficking people Omegas specifically in his city, under his rule, without his knowledge. Lily, where have you been staying these 3 nights? In our room at the boarding house. I know how to make bread and butter, and we had some cheese. I've been waiting for Mama to come home, but she hasn't. Aldrich exchanged a look with Gareth. A 7-year-old had been living alone for 3 days, surviving on scraps and hope, while her mother was goddess knows where. Why me? Aldrich asked. Why did you come to me, instead of the city guard or the temple? Because Mistress Hale said you're the only one the bad men are scared of. Lily's voice got stronger. She said when you give an order, people follow it. And she said you have rules about hurting families. Aldrich almost laughed. His reputation for protecting families had more to do with maintaining order than any moral code. But somehow this child had seen through the crown and authority to something he'd forgotten was there. Lily, what you're asking me to do could be very dangerous. These men, they're not just bad, they're evil. They hurt people. If I help you, there might be fighting. People might get hurt. Lily looked up at him with those wide brown eyes. Will you get hurt? The question caught him off guard. When was the last time someone had worried about his safety? His guards protected him out of duty. His counsel advised him out of obligation. This little girl was asking if he'd be okay. I'll be fine, he said softly. But Lily, if I do this, if I help you get your mother back, you can never tell anyone. Not the guards, not the temple, not your friends. Do you understand? Lily nodded so hard her tangled hair bounced. I promise. I swear on Mama's life. Aldrich stood up slowly, his battle-scarred knees protesting. At 34, he was feeling every year he'd spent fighting wars and ruling kingdoms. But looking down at Lily Ashford, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. Gareth, he said without turning around. Send word to Captain Vale. Tell him to assemble the King's Guard. Full armor, full weapons. Your Majesty, Thorne said carefully, we're talking about deploying the Royal Guard over a commoner's child. Aldrich turned, and both men took an involuntary step back. They'd seen their king angry before, but this was different. This was personal. We're talking about cleaning up my city, Aldrich said quietly. The Thornwood gang has been pushing boundaries for months. Taking an Omega mother crosses every law we have. He looked back down at Lily. Child, I'm going to ask you to do something very brave. Can you handle brave? How? Lily nodded. I need you to go to Mistress Hale's bakery. Tell her King Aldrich sent you, and you need to stay there until I come get you. Don't leave that bakery for any reason. Don't talk to anyone except Mistress Hale. Can you do that? You're really going to help me? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Aldrich knelt down one more time and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Lily, I give you my word as king. Your mother will be home tonight. Tears started flowing down her cheeks again, but this time they were different. Relief, hope, gratitude all mixed together. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Aldrich said, standing up. Thank me when you're having breakfast with your mother tomorrow morning. Lily started walking toward the bakery, then stopped and turned back. Your Majesty, what if they come looking for me? Aldrich smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. Then they'll have to go through me first. As Lily disappeared into the crowded street, Aldrich pulled out a small whistle and blew 3 sharp notes, a signal that echoed across the palace grounds. The Thornwood gang had made a fatal mistake. They'd hurt a child in his kingdom. They'd taken an Omega mother. They'd pushed too far. Gareth, it's time. Assemble everyone. We're going to war. Within 30 minutes, Aldrich's entire royal guard was in motion. Messengers rode across the city like ripples in dark water. Soldiers from the barracks, veterans from the border wars, specialists who handled the kind of problems that required permanent solutions. By sunset, 47 men had assembled in the palace war room. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Aldrich had handpicked every member of his personal guard based on 2 criteria: absolute loyalty and the ability to handle delicate situations without creating political disasters. Ex-mercenaries. Former knights who'd crossed lines they couldn't uncross. Men who understood that some missions required surgical precision. "Listen carefully," Aldrich said, standing at the head of a long table covered with city maps, intelligence reports, and weapons. "The Thornwood gang has been testing our authority for months. Tonight, they crossed a line that cannot exist." He placed a small portrait on the table, a miniature he'd commissioned from memory while his guards assembled, a woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands. Several men shifted uncomfortably. Involving civilians changed everything. 7 years old, mother taken 3 days ago. The Thornwoods are demanding 20 gold crowns her dead husband supposedly owed them. But this isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about territory. It's about the fact that these criminals think they can operate in my city without consequences. Captain Vale cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, intelligence says they're using that old warehouse complex by the docks, the one with the storage cellars. Perfect place to keep people if you don't want them found." Aldrich nodded. "How many?" 15, maybe 20. Armed but undisciplined. They're not expecting trouble. Definitely not expecting the King's Guard. "Good." Aldrich's voice was ice-cold steel. "Here's how this works. We go in quietly. We get the woman out alive. Anyone who laid hands on her doesn't leave. Anyone who even looked at her wrong doesn't leave. The Thornwood leaders specifically, they get special treatment." Vale spoke up. "Your Majesty, what about witnesses? Other victims they might have?" "We get everyone out. Clean house completely. Make sure nothing like this ever happens again in my kingdom." The men around the table nodded. They'd done this before, suppressing rebellions, handling threats to the crown, but never for reasons like this. Usually, it was politics. Border disputes, assassination attempts, nobles who needed reminding of their place. This felt different, personal. Aldrich pulled out a sealed letter he'd received an hour earlier. Inside was a hastily drawn map showing the warehouse location and a note. "The Omega works in cellars. Hurry." An informant. One of the dozens of eyes Aldrich kept scattered throughout the city. "I know this place." Thorne studied the map. "Dockside Warehouse District. Lots of hiding spots, but only 3 ways in or out. If we move fast, we can seal it before anyone escapes." "Perfect." Aldrich began distributing weapons from the Royal Armory. "Vale, take 12 men and cover the north entrance. Thorne, 10 men on the south side. Gareth, you're with me. We go through the front door." "What about City Guard response?" one of the younger soldiers asked. Aldrich smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The City Guard doesn't patrol the docks after dark. Too dangerous. Besides, this will be over before anyone thinks to report it." As his men prepared their equipment, Aldrich stepped onto the palace balcony overlooking the city. Mistress Hale's bakery was still lit, and he could imagine Lily sitting inside, probably trying to stay awake. The child had been through hell, but she'd been smart enough to find the one person in the kingdom who could actually help her. His aide appeared beside him with a sealed report, another update from the informant network. Aldrich read it quickly, then burned it in a nearby brazier. Some things were too cruel to exist, even on paper. The report described what they'd found. Evidence of an organized trafficking operation. Not just Rosa Ashford, but multiple Omega women. Planned sales to foreign buyers. Profits that would make his tax revenue look modest. "Your Majesty," Gareth appeared beside him. "Everything's ready. Horses saddled. Routes planned. We can be there in 20 minutes. "Change of plans," Aldrich said, pocketing his riding gloves. "I want to be there in 15. The convoy moved through the city like shadows. 4 units on horseback, armor darkened, moving through alleys and side streets Aldrich had memorized over 12 years of maintaining order. The warehouse district was exactly what you'd expect from a place where people disappeared. Abandoned buildings, broken street lamps. The kind of neighborhood where screaming wouldn't bring help, because everyone knew better to get involved. Aldrich's horse stopped 2 blocks from the warehouse complex. Through the darkness, he could see lights in 3 different buildings, guards walking patrol routes, but casually, like they were bored. The Thornwoods had gotten comfortable operating in his territory. That was about to change. Vale's team in position, came the whisper through his communication network. "North side, secured. Thorn here. South entrance covered. 2 guards eliminated quietly, bodies concealed." Aldrich checked his sword one final time. a blade he'd carried for 10 years. Royal steel. Never failed to cut through whatever stood in his way. Tonight, he planned to cut through everything. "Gareth, you ready for this?" "Been ready since that child showed up with a silver penny," Gareth replied. "Nobody hurts innocents in our kingdom." "Nobody," Aldrich agreed. This was why he'd built his guard carefully, choosing men who understood honor even in violent work. They weren't just soldiers. They were protectors of something bigger than themselves. "All teams go." They moved like ghosts through the warehouse district. Years of coordinated operations had taught them to communicate without words, to anticipate each other's movements, to strike with precision that left no room for mistakes. The first guard went down before he could draw his blade. The second managed to reach for a warning bell but never got the chance to ring it. By the time Aldrich reached the first warehouse, 8 Thornwood soldiers were already neutralized. Inside, they found what Aldrich expected and hoped they wouldn't: evidence of trafficking on a scale that made his blood boil. Ledgers showing dozens of transactions, documents listing prices for human cargo, maps showing smuggling routes. "Your Majesty," Thorn's voice echoed through the darkness. "Found her. Cellar 3. She's alive, but barely conscious. Looks like they drugged her." "Anyone with her?" "4 guards. Not anymore." Aldrich felt something in his chest loosen slightly. Rosa Ashford was alive. That meant he could keep his promise to Lily. "Vale, what's your status?" "Cellar 7. You need to see this. They've got 6 other Omega women here, all in terrible condition." "Shay." Aldrich closed his eyes briefly. The Thornwoods hadn't just taken Rosa. They were running a full operation, kidnapping Omega women, probably planning to sell them as servants, or worse, in his city, under his nose. "Get everyone out. Medical attention for anyone who needs it. Safe transportation to wherever they want to go. Full protection, until this is over." "What about the Thornwood leaders themselves?" Aldrich checked the moon's position. Almost midnight. Lily had been waiting 5 hours for news about her mother. 5 hours too long. "Warehouse main office. That's where we finish this." The walk to the main office felt like a death march. Aldrich had killed before, in war, in defense of his crown, in protection of his kingdom, but always for political reasons. This was different. This was justice for a 7-year-old girl who'd offered him everything she owned to save her mother. The Thornwood brothers were exactly what Aldrich expected. Garrett Thornwood, the older one, was counting coins when the King's Guard breached the office. His younger brother Marcus was examining a shipping manifest. Both men reached for weapons when they saw Aldrich enter. Neither made it. "King Aldrich," Garrett said, hands slowly rising. "We can work this out. Business is business." "You're right," Aldrich replied calmly. "Business is business. And your business just ended. The Omega woman, she's worth 20 gold crowns to us. We split it. You get 15. Everyone walks away happy." Aldrich stepped closer. "Let me tell you about that woman. Her name is Rosa Ashford. She's a widow. She works at a tavern washing dishes to support her 7-year-old daughter. Her husband died last winter, and she's been struggling to keep food on the table ever since." The brothers exchanged glances. They clearly hadn't expected the king to know personal details. "Tonight, that 7-year-old daughter walked up to me and offered me a silver penny to help her. 1 penny. Everything she had in the world. Because you animals took her mother." "Look, we didn't know she was connected to you," Marcus said quickly. "This is a misunderstanding. We can make this right. I-M-I-Y." Aldrich's hand moved to his sword hilt. "You made her daughter live alone for 3 days. You threatened a child. You trafficked innocent people in my city." "It was just business," Garrett insisted. "Nothing personal." "You're wrong," Aldrich said quietly. "This couldn't be more personal." What happened next took exactly 3 minutes. When it was over, the Thornwood gang's trafficking operation was permanently closed. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of Aldrich's men securing the area and helping the rescued women. Aldrich walked to Cellar 3 where Gareth was helping Rosa Ashford to her feet. She was weak, disoriented, but alive. Her eyes focused on Aldrich with confusion. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm a friend of your daughter's," Aldrich said gently. "Lily's waiting for you at Mistress Hale's bakery." She's been very brave. Rosa started crying. Not from fear or pain, but from relief. Lily, is she okay? Did they hurt her? She's fine. Scared, but fine. She's the reason you're safe right now. I don't understand. Aldrich helped Rosa toward the exit. Your daughter came to me tonight. She offered me a silver penny to help you. Bravest thing I've ever seen. As they walked through the warehouse complex, Rosa looked around at the aftermath. She was smart enough to understand what had happened, even if she didn't know the details. You killed people for us, she said quietly. I protected my citizens, Aldrich corrected. There's a difference. Why? You're the king. We're nobody. Just common folk. Aldrich stopped walking and looked at this woman who'd survived 3 days of hell because her 7-year-old daughter refused to give up hope. Rosa, you raised a child who walked up to the most powerful man in the kingdom and asked for help. Not because she was foolish or desperate, but because she knew right from wrong and was willing to risk everything to save you. That makes you somebody very special. They reached Aldrich's carriage. Gareth opened the door while Vale coordinated cleanup operations behind them. By morning, there would be no evidence that the Thornwood gang had ever existed. What happens now? Rosa asked. Now you go home. You hug your daughter. You try to forget this ever happened. And you? What do you get out of this? Aldrich thought about that question as they rode through the empty streets toward the bakery. What did he get out of risking his authority? His carefully maintained distance from common affairs, his reputation as a king who didn't involve himself in civilian problems. He got to keep a promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed the world could be good if the right people cared enough to make it good. That seemed like enough. Mistress Hale's bakery had never felt so bright. Candles flickered in every window while Lily sat behind the counter, her small legs swinging from a stool that was too tall for her. She'd been staring at the door for what felt like forever, jumping every time someone walked past outside. Mistress Hale kept offering her sweet rolls and milk, but Lily's stomach was twisted too tight to eat anything. She just wanted her mama. When the door opened at midnight, Lily's heart nearly stopped. But instead of the bad men with scars and rings, King Aldrich Ravenshield walked through the entrance with the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. Her mother. Mama! Lily launched herself off the stool and ran faster than she'd ever run in her life. Rosa Ashford caught her daughter and held her so tight it hurt, but Lily didn't care. She breathed in her mother's familiar smell, lavender soap, and the bread scent from the tavern. Baby, oh my baby, Rosa whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you alone. I wasn't alone, Lily said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. The king helped me, just like I knew he would. Rosa looked up at Aldrich, who stood quietly by the door. Mistress Hale had retreated to give them privacy. How can I ever thank you, Your Majesty? Rosa asked. Aldrich reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled silver penny Lily had given him. He walked over and gently placed it in Lily's small hand. Your payment's been refunded, he said with a slight smile. Consider the job completed at no charge. Lily looked down at the coin, then back up at Aldrich. But I hired you. That was our deal. That was our deal, child. But you gave me something worth more than money tonight. What? Aldrich knelt down to Lily's level one last time. You reminded me why I wear this crown. Sometimes we forget that protecting people isn't just about maintaining order. Sometimes it's about doing what's right. Lily carefully put the silver penny in her pocket. Will the bad men come back? No, Aldrich said with absolute certainty. They won't be bothering anyone ever again. Rosa understood what that meant, but she didn't ask for details. Some things were better left unsaid. What happens now? Rosa asked. Aldrich stood, his expression serious. You go home. You lock your door. You live your life. But Rosa, if anyone ever threatens you or Lily again, you send word to the palace. Day or night. No questions asked. I can't pay you if something happens again. You don't need to. Lily's already paid for a lifetime of protection. Gareth stepped forward from the doorway. Your Majesty, we should return to the palace. The council will be wondering. Aldrich nodded, then looked back at Lily. You take care of your mother, understand? And Lily, remember what you learned tonight. Sometimes the right person will help you, even when the world feels scary. You just have to be brave enough to ask. I will, Lily promised solemnly. As Aldrich and Gareth headed toward the door, Lily called out, "Your Majesty?" He turned back. "Are you a good king or a bad king?" Aldrich paused, considering the question. In his world, the lines between good and bad weren't always clear. He'd made hard decisions, punished enemies, operated outside mercy when necessary. But tonight, he'd saved a mother and daughter. He'd kept a promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed in him when she had nowhere else to turn. "I'm whatever I need to be," he said finally. "Tonight, I got to be the good king." After they left, Rosa and Lily walked home through the quiet streets, holding hands tight. 3 months later, Aldrich was reviewing petitions in the throne room when a messenger brought him a small package. Inside was a hand-drawn picture. Stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, it read, "Thank you, Your Majesty. Love, Lily, and Mama." Aldrich never displayed gifts from nobles or diplomatic presents from foreign courts. But that drawing went up on his private study wall, right next to the kingdom map. Because sometimes the most powerful man in the realm needs to remember what he's really protecting. Lily Ashford grew up safe. She learned to read and write, became a healer. Every year on the anniversary of that night, she'd leave a small envelope at the palace gates. Always the same thing, a silver penny and a note that said, "For the next child who needs help." Aldrich kept every single one. Because that's the thing about courage, it doesn't matter how big you are, how much power you have, or how many people fear your name. Sometimes the bravest person in the kingdom is a 7-year-old girl with 1 silver penny and hope. And sometimes that's exactly what the world needs.